and that to not record votes discourage councillor to have a personal agenda. Is that correct?
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. So regarding the public questioning council's decision, I think it would be best when we have people who approach us on the street or wherever, is to refer them to the original discussion. It's sometimes very difficult to recall exactly what we say, why we say what, and to point them to YouTube or to Channel 32 and direct them properly, or to invite them to council. That's an information problem in my point of view. Now, in the other question, there is great validity in what you say in the notion of accountability to the electorate. But the question is, where should the light shine? On the individual councillor whose vote is recorded, or on a decision made by the collective effort of council, who must, according to the MGA, consider the welfare and interest of the municipality as a whole. And so here are the views of two experts in governance. One of them, you have a document in your package, is Eli Miner. He's an acclaimed parliamentarian, and he wrote in his book, 101 Boardroom Problems. I will give you the book if you want. On page 44, he says the following: recording how individuals voted diverts attention from the action of the board, here meaning council, as a collective decision-making body, and focus on individual actions. This may convey the false impression that the accountability for decisions is personal, when in fact it is collective. And this was also echoed by Michael S. Sullivan, a municipal lawyer and presenter at the Brownlee Seminar, when he said, and I quote, that were his word, once a decision is made, it is the will of council. It shows respect for the democratic process. However, I also believe that at times there are, as you mentioned, as member of council, you may have a strong stand on a contentious ideological, moral issue, or on campaign promises that you made and that would push you to want your vote recorded. This is legitimate, and it totally is allowed under the MGA, Section 185, that is called recording of votes. 185.1 says, before a vote is taken by council, a councillor may request that the vote be recorded. 185.2 says, when a vote is recorded, the minutes must show the names of the councillors present and whether each councillor voted for or against a proposal or abstained. In my past experience as councillor, we had about 3 or 4 recorded votes on issues that affected the deep personal belief of some councillors on a personal issue. This is a great way to exercise democracy. So my recommendation would be that we continue to be ruled by the terms that we all accepted at the beginning of our term of duty, when we had our book given to us, when we reviewed all the different ways we were going to address voting. And recording of individual vote, to me, should be the exception, not the rule. So it's up to you. Councillor Peavoy?
So just a couple of thoughts. I know as far as difficulty, right, it becomes very, very simple when we look at a digital solution, if we are to go that route. What I'm curious to know is what the expense of such a solution would be. And I mean, I've got some buzzers at my house we can use for games. I can plug into my USB drive and record votes from all 7 of us for about, $8.50. They'd look a little funny and they're a little cumbersome. Not as professional as maybe we would like to see here, since they're from a child's game. But I have used them before as a seminary teacher to do things like recording votes in classes. So I don't know what, a more expensive option would look like.
Are you requesting such a way of recording is a little bit what is done in larger cities, right?
Sure,
Asbridge,
sure.
Calgary, Edmonds, they all have this
And
type
at the
of
provincial and
electronic.
federal levels.
Yes. So is that because you feel when you have to raise your hand, you feel more pressured into a decision, and you feel this way it's more like a personal vote?
Right, not at all. In fact, I wouldn't take away the raising of the hand. I would just say that, you know, at the push of a button, it could be recorded automatically, just to ease Graham's burden if we decide to go that direction.
Mayor, I'd like to address a couple of issues that have been brought forward. The issue of being a councillor at this table, when the motion is made, it's made at the end of the discussion, and all councillors should have in their mind whether they're opposed to that vote or they're in favor of that vote. There is no sitting on the fence at that time. When we leave this council chambers, we leave as men, as adults, and as women, with it in mind that whatever vote we did, it's accepted by the whole. Number two, a recorded vote, as far as I'm concerned, this councillor is concerned, alleviates any problems of personal agendas.
But as I just mentioned, the question is, where do we go with this? Are we intended to function as a collective group or a collection of individuals?
And that's a great point. Almost, it would take away from that unity that our current communication policy is trying to, enforce. Well, not enforce, establish. I want to speak to Councillor Creed's comment about, the idea of maybe calling for a roll call after the vote. Sometimes you're not 100% sure you'd like to see it until you see how that vote just went, and then you're like, dang, I wish I'd called for a roll call, Just a thought. I mean, that's a thought I've had twice since I've been on council, and I anticipate I'll have that thought.
What do you mean a roll call?
Sorry,
I understand a little
that's
bit.
just the terminology I'm using for a call for, the recorded vote.
So in other words, what you're suggesting is that there be an option to be able to ask for a recorded vote after the vote?
Would alleviate a little of that pressure.
I think that would be a bad idea.
Yeah, I just comment, under the terms of the MGA there and those sections that you read, I think if there is a real strong concern on a particular issue, we could refer to that and go to a recorded vote, call for it. I don't think we need to have it in all cases, thinking about that now.
Yeah. I haven't
I
heard
guess I
from
could
Councillor
change my mind,
Edmonds.
huh?
Thank you.
Well,
Councillor
like it's been
Edmonds.
said before, we only had 3 or 4 in the last 3 years, and 99% of the votes are all in favor. So if you feel that you want to state your point of view, then I think we just go with the MGA and ask for a recorded vote on those.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to ask Councillor Barfuss to give us his opinion.
That, basically, Councillor Edmonds' thoughts are exactly what my thoughts were, is that I think there's a mechanism in place now in asking for a recorded vote, if it's something that, and typically it only happens on contentious issues.
Yeah.
And so I don't see a need to be having a recorded vote for every single vote.
Okay.
As you mentioned, we've got Channel 32 here. In effect, they're all recorded votes.
Yes.
Just not formally in the minutes.
Thank you,
I
Councillor Creed.
wonder if we could request to go to our delegation and then return, to this discussion
can-
if we need to.
Can we maybe finish it?
If
And
we're
maybe,
if
I
we're
think
at that point.
we're really well ready for a vote at this point.
Okay.
So if somebody wants to put a motion, Councillor Bengry,
One more comment.
go ahead.
When we get ready to vote, then I think the chair, whether it be you or the deputy mayor or whoever it is, has to give us enough time without just saying, I'm calling for a motion right now and calling for a question. I think we need to have that time to collect our thoughts and say, I'd like to have a recorded vote on this.
Okay,
Before
I
we call
appreciate
for that.
that. I appreciate that, and I think I'm quite fair in trying to get everybody's opinion before we have taken any kind of vote. I think I've been quite fair with the process. Thank you.
Also, I just want to make a note that, and I think we're all aware, that usually it's you mentioned 99% were in favor. It's usually that 1% though.
Which is okay,
That wants
it's
to be
there.
recognized
That's right.
when the vote is roll call.
Yeah.
And
So-
trust
and
me,
that's fine.
Councillor Creed can remember a time we voted against, and that's quite okay. All right, so could we have a motion to keep the voting as...
Do we need a motion to keep it? I mean, is it, we don't?
Yeah, this was just.
So
There, I'll-
maybe we don't even need a motion for
No,
that.
I put this forward for discussion with
I
the
think it's a very
council.
good discussion,
And,
thank you.
and I accept the council's remarks, and I appreciate the council's remark. And if this is the will of the council, then I would suggest we just carry on and
Thank you.
refer to the MGA when we want recording vote.
And that is a way, it's a very good way, it's there for us.
And if I may, I want to echo Councillor Bengry, who, by the way, I'm grateful you brought this up.
Yes, it's
Um,
always a good topic.
On those issues that may be considered, controversial, we'll
Yes,
say.
and there will be
That
some.
we may be given a little extra time or consideration from the chair to ask for that recorded vote.
No problem.
Thank you.
Okay?
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so, our delegation, I'm so sorry, we did not have the electronic in place. Now we're ready for you, sorry about that.
Do we have
So,
another-
that's Mr. Beck?
Yes.
Mr. Beck, welcome. Go ahead. So we're going to get a presentation in favor of fluoride removal from the water. That's a position. Thank you.
That's my position.
Just for council and for the public knowledge, we will have at other time some other presentation that may not present the same views, but that is to educate council and to allow us with knowledge to be more powerful in making decisions. Okay?
That's what I understood.
Yes, that-
Dr. Begg, in this presentation is made, what I would like us to consider and try to keep in mind is any points that are made that both sides can agree on, because that's what I would like to be able to make our decision on in the end, is criteria that, that there's no controversy on, something that we can all agree on, that both sides will probably agree on, because I think there's enough information that we can actually make a decision based on, some facts, yeah.
I think if we hear the two sides of the story, then we're educated and we will have that privilege to decide.
Then, excuse me, Mayor, but the next council meeting, we're going to have the opposition to this? So that we can-
Administration will have some people presenting a different position. Jeff?
Just to be clear, we're not bringing in necessarily an opposing view.
Yeah,
So
different information.
we have, the dentists in town would like to write a letter as to what their feeling is on it. But no, we're not
Okay.
giving them all of this presentation to do counterpoint to the presentation.
The reason why I'm asking this, Mayor, is I would like to bring this to a conclusion. This is an item that I think is important with the community, and
Yeah.
I'd like to bring it to you.
I totally agree with you. We heard that on a campaign 12
Yeah.
quite often. Thank you.
Mayor, councilors, thank you for inviting us. I'll try to be brief. I could talk hours about this, but I won't.
Could I request that you introduce yourself there?
I said, okay, my name is James Beck. I'm a professor emeritus of medical biophysics from the University of Calgary. I'm an MD from Washington University School of Medicine in St. Louis, Missouri, in the United States, and a PhD in biophysics from the University of California in Berkeley. I want to say that first of two disclaimers. One is that I have no financial or material interest in fluoridation. The other is that I'm a physician, but I'm not registered to practice. My career has been an academic as a teacher and researcher in biophysics. So I'm not giving anybody a medical advice. I would like to, I'll have to be quick. I understand we have 25 minutes between us. Is that right?
Yeah.
So,
25 minutes, and we'll leave 5-10 minutes for questions.
okay, I, by the way, will welcome your questions after I've spoken, and also I've given cards to your executive officer, and you're welcome to question me by email if you wish, and especially after you hear from promoters of fluoridation. But for now, let me just say that on the first slide, I'll just show that there really, you have, as counselors, which are given the responsibility for making the decision about fluoridation, have to consider. First, is it effective in preventing dental caries and preventing cavities? And secondly, is it safe for human consumption? Now, those two are scientific questions. And I recognize the difficulty that non-scientists may have, who are especially sitting on deciding bodies such as this one, to try to deal with the scientific arguments presented by supposed experts on both sides. So the thing I recommend to you in that score is just to insist that we have reasons for what we tell you. And we can't expect you to study the scientific literature, but you should make sure that we're making our comments on the basis of scientific literature on those first two questions. The third question is really very simple. Is it ethical? And I'll deal with that just briefly in a moment. So the first question on is it effective is, the answer to that is the swallowing of fluoride in any form is not effective. It is effective by applying it directly to the teeth in sufficient concentration. But swallowing it is not effective in preventing cavities to any substantial degree. Now this slide shows you a set of data from the World Health Organization on 18 countries in an industrialized world. You can see that from the early 1960s, when fluoridation was underway, up to 2004, there is a consistent reduction in the number of cavities. That DMFT on the vertical axis, it means decayed, missing, or filled teeth, which is considered a measure of whether cavities have existed. All 18 of those countries have been improved in that term. Fewer and fewer cavities over those decades. However, why has that happened? Well, 14 of those countries were not fluoridated. The 4 were, but their results are the same. So it's correct when the promoters say, since fluoridation started, we've had lower and lower incidence or prevalence of cavities. But it's not correct that it's because of the fluoridation. Now, this is just we'll move on quickly now to some of the aspects of the second question. It's safe. This is just a slide that shows you 3 degrees of dental fluorosis, which even promoters of fluoridation agree is a consequence of fluoridation. They argue sometimes that it's just a cosmetic issue, but you try to tell that to a 14-year-old girl in high school who won't smile because her teeth are mobile. So it's a serious issue, and that's agreed. Now, there are many other possible harms. And some of the evidence for this is quite strong. Some, for example, on bone, the issue of whether fractures are more frequent in cases where the person has been using fluoridated water. In the case of hip fracture, the evidence is quite good, that it is fluoride in the water at doses comparable to what you would receive at the concentrations used in North America for fluoridation are associated with an increasing incidence of fracture of the hip. The thyroid system, there's no question about that. In fact, fluoride was used in the 30s and 40s and 50s of the last century to treat hyperthyroidism. So fluoride ingested suppresses the function of the thyroid system, which has serious consequences in many other systems. Now, the reproductive system, the evidence is quite good on some scores about early onset of menstruation in girls, lower sperm count in men, and so on. The brain is another very serious possibility of risk, and it seems that the evidence is fairly strong that in the early years, I would say in the prenatal stage and in the early childhood, fluoridation is associated with lower IQ. It's associated in laboratory studies with histological damage, that is damage to the cells in the brain. And there is evidence also for the cardiovascular system. There are other things, but I won't want to go into that because of the limit in time. Now, the third question, is it ethical? Is something you don't have to be a scientist to answer, or a physician, or a dentist. We can all deal with that. And in fact, in the case of Calgary, after council voted to stop fluoridation, we were told, some of us who had spent a lot of time discussing the issues with them, were told that the scientific problem was essentially too much for them. They didn't know how to deal with that. They didn't have the background for it. But the ethical issue moved them. And there was a vote of, what was that? The vote was 12 to 3 to stop fluoridation. Those three opposed votes, there's only one person of those three who was really against fluoridation. The other two thought they hadn't had enough time to consider it. So they stayed with the status quo. Now, in medical ethics, there are certain requirements before you can administer a treatment or give a drug. By the way, fluoride is a drug. It's given for the purpose to prevent or treat a disease, so it's a drug. And hydrofluorosilicic acid, which is used to deliver the fluoride, is in that sense a drug. And when you administer a procedure or a drug in medical ethics, you have to have had given the person who receives that procedure or administration of the drug the opportunity to talk with a professional who is qualified to advise her or him on what the reason is for giving them the treatment, what the possible side effects are. You must tell them that the effect on them will be monitored in a qualified manner, and that they will have the opportunity to stop it. The fluoridation of an entire population of some jurisdiction doesn't meet those requirements, not one of them. Now, in the case of considering fluoridation, one way to handle this is to apply the precautionary principle. The precautionary principle is often stated in a much oversimplified way. That is, if you don't, if you aren't sure, don't. Well, that is one way to look at it. But actually, in application, in a formal procedure, there is a framework for considering the question of whether we should do this or not. And when you apply this to fluoridation, all these steps apply. What is the expected benefit? You have to ask of that. Well, in the case of fluoridation, which I haven't shown you all the evidence, I just showed you the World Health Organization data, but there is very good evidence of more formal studies that shows that it's not essentially effective. So what is the expected benefit? Well, the question is whether it reduces cavities. Well, we dealt very briefly with that. The next question you have to ask, is there evidence of harm for doing this? Even if it has a benefit, you don't want to give it unless the harm is negligible, or at least much less than the benefit, where the benefit is, say, some life-saving procedure. Well, there is evidence of harm. There was a study by the National Research Council in the United States that was published in 2006 that is the best we have review of the possibilities of harm. And there were 12 members on it. Some of them were okay with fluoridation, some were against fluoridation, some didn't know, but they were all scientists. And they had the help of dozens of other scientists who weren't members of the panel. There were four harmful effects that they concluded there was strong evidence on. Well, of course, one is dental fluorosis, the other is thyroid system, and so on. So, and they felt that hip fracture was associated with fluoride. Promoters of fluoridation say that study isn't any good because it occurred because the Environmental Protection Agency in the United States asked them to do this study to see if the EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency's rule that no more than 4 parts per million should be applied in fluoridation. But and so the promoters say, well, this panel didn't consider the kinds of concentrations we have in fluoridation. That's not true. The panel said this is a ridiculous request. So they considered a broader case of fluoridation for a broader range of concentrations. And they wrote a 507-page report with 1,100 or so papers cited, and published that in 2006. The promoters of fluoridation don't mention that report, which is a shame, and in fact they're responsible. The other question you have to ask in applying the precautionary principle is, are the harms that might occur reversible? Well, in the case of fluoridation, probably the harm to the thyroid system is reversible. If you stop the ingestion of fluoride, the thyroid system will recover. But in terms of brain development, effects like IQ, that's not reversible. So some are reversible and some aren't, and some serious ones are not. Now, then you have to ask, are there risks in stopping doing this? Well, that's been a big issue in the case of fluoridation, and those of us who oppose fluoridation are often attacked by promoters who say, well, if you stop fluoridating in the city, the incidence of cavities will go up immediately. So this question has been tested specifically. There have been research projects designed specifically to ask the question, what happens afterwards? Well, one way to do that, and probably the best controlled way to do that, is to look at 2 cities that have been fluoridated for a long time, and they're comparable. We try to get rid of what are called confounding variables by confounding variables such as the socioeconomic status or the family income, which we know is directly related to the incidence of cavities. The higher the income, the fewer cavities. There's no question about that. So we try to get rid of those. So we try to compare these 2 cities. Say we've found 2 cities where this is a legitimate question to ask. They're both fluoridated. We stop it in this city. And then we watch what happens. And what happens, there are dozens of such studies. And what happens is that either the incidence or prevalence of cavities stays the same in both cities, or it decreases in the city that stops fluoridation. So there's no risk in stopping. And of course, I'm convinced that it's not effective. So that's an easy conclusion for me to come to, but I'm just telling you that's been specifically investigated. Now, another important question of fluoridation, and one that World Health Organization data suggests to us, is, are there any alternatives? is there anything else we can do that will prevent cavities? And the answer is, that's not much of an issue if you don't think it helps prevent cavities. But even if you think it helps prevent cavities, is there something else you can do? Well, yes, because we know that diet has a positive influence on the condition of your teeth and the development of your teeth in fetuses and infants. That education of people and teaching them how to manage dental hygiene, that is another factor. And there are also topical treatments in dentist's office, and if that's done carefully so that the mucosal membranes in the mouth are not exposed to, say, an application of 4,000 part per million fluoride in it, that seems to be a benefit, as does fluoridated toothpaste, as long as you don't swallow it and you don't give it to children. So there are alternatives, and there are alternatives that people can agree to. That's another problem which I haven't touched on, and perhaps Mark will, about whether you should have choice or not. And those alternatives, by the way, some of them are quite low cost. And someone can get, if they, I think, mistakenly want to swallow fluoride, they can get it cheaply at pharmacies. And so I don't think that's an issue. In fact, in Calgary, the council considered an amendment to their motion providing some kind of assistance like that to groups that might be disadvantaged in the community and wanted some assistance in this with respect to alternative ways to go. Now, I've used 10 minutes? I should stop. Yes?
I just was saying regarding the last point that you made, in a local food store in town, I saw a pamphlet that is posted near the pharmacy from AHS that talks about fluoride treatment for people in a special socio-economic class. And I thought, how interesting.
They're recommending
it's already posted and available
assistance
in
in what way? In what?
You have to be within a certain bracket of income.
No, I mean, what do they want to do? A topical application?
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, okay, that's fine. I just hope they're not advising that you buy tablets of fluoride
No,
and
that's
swallow
not the
them.
case.
But you give me an opening if, in the few minutes that I might have left, because what happened in Lethbridge in 2011, was it? They had a public but council meeting at which some of us argued against fluoridation and some argued in favor of fluoridation, but the format put the opponents first and the proponents last, and there was no opportunity to comment or to have rebuttal, and some of the outrageous statements, including from the Peter Cooney, who was the dental officer of health for Health Canada, actually frightened the councillors with things that were not true. And I don't know whether he's lying. He might have been just ignorant and thought he was speaking the truth. But some of those things are, for example, I've heard frequently the claim by promoters at the York Review, which is a very famous review on both efficacy and toxicity of fluoridation. It was published in 2000, that it showed that it was safe and effective. That's not true. If you read the report of that committee, they say that they didn't have sufficient evidence to conclude that fluoridation was effective, and that they didn't have sufficient evidence to conclude that it was safe. They did have evidence to show that it was no benefit in any particular disadvantaged group in the population. There was no difference. So they're misrepresenting that. Now, I know in the case of a dental officer of health, he's been told 3 times that he was wrong to say that. And in fact, I sent him one page. I have some copies here in case you want to present them to the Alberta Health Services people when they come to talk to you. The Professor Trevor Sheldon, who supervised the panel, which did the York Review, a few years after was moved to issue a statement saying that those people should stop misrepresenting the conclusions of the York Review that they continually do. Now, there's...
Can I ask you a question then? Those are peers, those are people who are highly educated too, you would hope. We are here sitting, none of us have a degree in science.
Yeah, I understand that.
But here you have people in the Alberta Health Services, as well in a dental, at the dental level, Dentistry Association, that send different messages. Those are both educated group. So help us here.
Well, okay. This is difficult for me to do because if I say to you what I really want to say to you, it'll make me sound irresponsible and whining. But I have a lot of experience with the Alberta Health Services. I've appeared or made submissions to every council, every province in Canada.
Dr. Maggie, I'm sorry to interrupt you. There's a microphone on that podium, if you could just,
sorry.
for the sake of the public.
But I have more detailed and frequent experience with Alberta Health Services. And they claim, for example, that there's a huge amount of evidence that fluoridation is safe and effective. When in fact, you ask them, where is that evidence?
All right.
They have no evidence. They don't show it because it doesn't exist.
Okay, so your study is based on evidence, scientific evidence,
Yes.
and you can prove that.
Yes, and as I said, you're welcome to question me about this before or after the Alberta Health Service comes around with their roadshow, but through my email. Also, unfortunately, I don't have many of these I have only one left. This is a book which was published in 2010 on fluoridation, and it's organized in a way that makes it useful for references on particular questions. We've had a lot of these books that were bought by dentists in Calgary to give to counselors, but it's this is the only one I have left. It's, by the way, I'm one of the co-authors, but my disclaimer applies to this book too. My royalties, okay, you want me to, I don't get the royalties personally. They're dedicated to the struggle.
And Doctor, we have a few books available here.
Okay, so if you are done with your presentation, could we start asking questions? Would that be fair?
Okay, let's see if there's one.
There's other
one.
Okay. So we go to have another presentation first?
I think it's better if you ask questions because then I'll say something around here.
Okay.
Dr. Beck, I've read lots of literature on this, and I'm no scientist. But when fluoridation was first introduced into the water system, they used a different type of fluoride, didn't they? And now they're using totally different chemicals, which are absolutely not good for you. Can you tell us the difference in those chemicals?
Yeah, I hope Mark.
Yeah, I can touch on that actually as part of my presentation.
Yeah, but I like to walk around when I talk.
That is a wireless mic.
That's a professor in you.
Yeah.
That's a professor in you.
So, excuse me, Mark, but really,
Go for it.
Initially, fluoridation was started back in 1945 with using sodium fluoride. And sodium fluoride, when it's put in water, it divides into sodium ions and fluoride ions, and that's what you swallow. But it's very expensive. It was also, by the way, pharmaceutical grade. It's much cheaper to put garbage in your water, because what's used in North America in over 90% of the cases where there's fluoridation is hydrofluorosilicic acid, or the sodium salt of fluorosilicic acid. And that is not a natural substance. It doesn't appear in nature.
Nerve gas.
It is...
Toxic waste.
Well, it used to be toxic waste, mostly from producing fertilizer, phosphate fertilizer. Now it's not a toxic waste. It's not because it's a toxic product. Since they can sell it to us to put in our water, it becomes a product rather than a waste. Anyway, so what is it? Well, when you put it in water, the promoters tell us it completely hydrolyzes, divides, so that you get just all of the fluoride ions come off of the molecule in the water. And so it's no different from adding fluoride in any other way. I mean, including the natural way. Natural fluoride is almost entirely calcium fluoride, which is much less toxic. And in fact, it's almost insoluble. So when you put it in the water, it stays as calcium, and it passes through your body and leaves in the feces. But in hydrofluorosilicic acid, it doesn't break down completely. There are some fluorosilicates that remain, a very small part of it, that are toxic to the cells that line the stomach. We know that. But most of it becomes just fluoride. But in the stomach, that's where it counts. You see, the promoters don't talk about this. In the stomach, what happens to it? That's inside us. That's where it counts. What happens is that stomach contents are very acidic. That means there are a lot of hydrogen ions around. And the fluoride ion combines with the hydrogen ions, you find hydrofluoric acid. That's neutral. It crosses the cells that line the stomach and the intestine, passes through the wall, enters the blood, where it gets to all the organs of the body. And in the blood and on some of those organs, it can dissociate so that you have the fluoride ion again. But so that's the difference. Almost all of the fluoridated areas are using this hydrofluorosilicic acid.
So it is absolutely more toxic than the original stuff.
Yeah.
And Dr. Beck, you're suggesting that if we do leave fluoride in our water, we recommend to our citizens that they just swoosh it around in their mouth and spit it out quickly. I'm sorry.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, that's another point. Yes, don't swallow.
Don't swallow.
That's the rule. You can put it on your teeth if you want, and fluoridated toothpaste can do that for you. Fluoridated toothpaste is concentrated, to maybe from 1,500 to 3,000 parts per million. Just don't leave it in your mouth too long and don't swallow it. And it seems to be effective. Now, that brought up another point which I forgot. There's another question there.
Yeah, I'd like to know, suppose the fluoride is removed out of the water. You were saying there's a preventative measures that can be alternate measures. What about the young children who have the first set of teeth? What is the preferred treatment if you don't have fluoride in the water?
Well, you don't need a treatment with fluoride. That's my conclusion, because it doesn't substantially prevent cavities. If it does, if you want the topical effect, which does seem to have a small benefit, then you do it when the children are old enough and they have teeth that are exposed to the topical application, and when they're not so young that they can't help swallowing.
Right, so you would imagine when they start to have the second set of teeth.
What's that?
When they start to have their adult teeth grown.
Well, what happens when tooth development? You see, the fluoride, by the way, retards tooth development, so that children, infants that get fluoridated formula or drink fluoridated water in their cities, their teeth can come out later and exposed in the mouth. And you can't get cavities till your teeth are exposed because to the sugars and the acids that are formed from the sugars in the mouth. So when the teeth are developed, they will have fluoride in them in those children, but then their secondary teeth won't have fluoride that was introduced in the development. Once the teeth are developed and in the mouth, they won't be absorbing any more from formation, but they can absorb more in the enamel, and that doesn't hurt them if it's not swallowed.
Okay, thank you. Would you like to do your
Yes, ma'am.
presentation?
I
Thank
did.
you. What would you like? Do you need 10 minutes? 10 minutes
yeah,
about?
7 to
Okay,
10
good.
minutes.
Okay.
No, I don't. Yeah, it's just normal presentation. So, thank you first of all for welcoming us here and having us. My name is Mark Benson. I'm the manager of Harvest Saving Health in Lethbridge. We're an organic farm and organic food store, and we also do a lot of other health modalities, alternative health treatments. I have a master's degree in bioindustry from the Tokyo University of Agriculture. And so I wanted to speak to you today just based on our experience and our thoughts on fluoride. In our work every day, we meet a lot of people with a variety of health problems, and some of those people are people with fluoride-specific health problems. These are problems confirmed by specialists that it's been caused by fluoride, and they're struggling with it. So I work as a technical advisor for the water filtration part of our company. And so every day we're faced with the difficulty of removing fluoride for citizens that want to remove it in Lethbridge and in Cardston, the last two fluoridated communities in southern Alberta. And fluoride is incredibly easy to put in, but it's incredibly hard to take out. It's one of the most persistent chemicals that we have, known, that to remove from water once it's been put in. There's very few medias that are available for it, and they're all expensive, the ones that are capable of doing it. So, a lot of people ask why I'm fighting fluoride if I'm selling fluoride filters. But it's simply because I know how poisonous the chemical is. I know how hard it is to remove, how costly it is, so I think it's completely wrong that it's in municipal water. I don't think anybody should have to deal with it. So, we need to kind of consider what this means for the citizens of a city when you're fluoridating. They're being required to pay with their tax money to implement the fluoridation. But then if they want the freedom of choice to not have fluoride in their water, which is a medication, as Dr. Beck said, then they have to pay with their own money to take it back out again. So they're being billed twice, and the taking it out is a lot more expensive. To give you an idea what that costs, drinking water alone is about $600. But a whole house, and that's important because fluoride's absorbed transdermally as well as sewer ingestion. So showering and bathing in fluoride means that you're intaking fluoride in significant amounts. So to do whole house filtration, it costs about $4,000 minimum. So that's a lot for the average family. Most people can't afford that cost. So that's the first aspect. We're having to consider the civil rights and the basic right of choice of the citizens and what it means when that choice is usurped from them. What kind of financial cost it has. So I think on that point, Dr. Beck started to talk about the ethics, but what is the ethical consideration behind forced medication? And that would be that if even one person in a municipality was opposed to having fluoride forced like a medication in the water, then the majority needs to respect that. It would be the equivalent of saying, if we think that it's for the benefit of the underprivileged, which is an argument I don't buy, but even if we run with that argument for a moment, that we give fluoride in the water, then why stop at fluoride? Why shouldn't we put multivitamins in the water? Why not birth control medication? You can remove it with an RO filter. If you really want to, you just have to buy a filter and you can remove it. So when we start considering it in that context, it becomes a little bit more clear, the nature of fluoridation. A lot of people compare fluoridation to chlorination, but this is really kind of an absurd comparison, because chlorination is done for public safety. it's done to make the water bacteriologically stable and safe for delivery. I think that there are better ways that municipalities can handle that, but having said that, it's a necessary evil, and chlorine is actually quite easily removed from water from a filtration perspective, so once the water is delivered to an individual's house, they can easily, cost-effectively remove it. Fluoride, it's not so, as I mentioned. Furthermore, a lot of the arguments for fluoride are quite, as Dr. Beck was pointing out, are quite confused and unfounded. Alberta Health Services will often start their argument by saying fluoride is a naturally occurring substance. But as you pointed out, it's not. What we're talking about in municipal water fluoridation is not calcium fluoride, but rather hydrofluorosilicic acid, which is sourced from waste stream. Still, I understand from sources I have that it's still being sourced from industrial waste. Right now, actually, China is the major supplier of it because the phosphate fertilizer plants in Florida were flooded out in hurricanes a few years ago. And this substance is known to have heavy loads, or heavy, depending on the definition of heavy, loads of toxic contaminants, including lead, cadmium, arsenic, as well as radionuclides. So you have the potential radioactive isotopes in the substance as well. There's no standardized testing being done on this. Like you'll have, like when we talk with the Lethbridge plant, they have assurance in the what is it, the NSA? The NSF certification. But NSF itself has had to confess, in Utah actually, a very relevant example, they had to confess that they have entirely neglected to do any safety testing for tag contaminants in the hydrofluorosilicic acid supply. And because of that, the state of Utah has made a new governance that forces the company to disclose everything in the product that they're selling to municipalities to put in water, which is expected to spell the death of the fluoridation program in the state of Utah. Because up to this point, there's been no disclosure on what's been in that chemical. And that's what continues here in Canada. There's no disclosure on what kind of contamination can possibly be coming along with it. And so that's not even to mention that any and all safety data that we receive from Alberta Health Services is based on not hydrofluorosilicic acid, but on sodium fluoride testing or on calcium fluoride testing. So it's a completely different molecule, and you don't have to deal with that contamination load. This is something that Dr. Beck mentioned, but there are no double-blind studies published ever on safety or efficacy of water fluoridation. It's basically, you were asking, Mayor, why these educated people would be making this strong stance. It's basically hearsay. It's been passed on. You learn it in medical school, you learn it in dental school, but nobody's questioning the source and nobody's tracing it back. And inevitably, when we trace these sources back, the original papers are industry funded, and they're very sloppy in methodology and basis. They're very weak studies. On the anti-fluoride side, we have over 800 published papers now linking fluoride to adverse health effects. That's huge, 800. And some of those health effects include arthritis, cancer of bone, bladder, and lung, dental and skeletal fluorosis, diabetes, endocrine disruption, which would include the pancreas, thyroid, and pineal gland, increased rates of bone fracture, especially hip fractures in the elderly, higher levels of lead, and lowered IQ in children. There's a Harvard study published on the link between fluoride and lowered IQ, as well as kidney disease. So when we consider all this, we have to ask why we're doing it and why, is this something so unusual? But when we look at the rest of the world, we realize that it is quite unusual that we are fluoridating here. 95% of the world is unfluoridated. 98% of Western Europe has long ago chosen not to fluoridate. They made the deliberate choice in the 70s when it was becoming popular that they didn't want it. In Canada, only 30% of cities are fluoridated, and since 2010, 30 communities have decided to take it out. So it's definitely a waning trend to have fluoride in your water. There are, on record, 14 Nobel laureates in medicine and chemistry that have unequivocally opposed fluoridation. There's over 4,600 professionals now that have signed the professional statement to end water fluoridation petition. Ironically, there's 1,500 scientists, lawyers, and engineers and other professional employees of the EPA itself, the body that is approving and regulating fluoridation in the U.S. and thus for us, who oppose their own agency's policy of fluoridation. It's actually almost all of their scientists are against fluoridation. But the body, independent of its scientists, is still maintaining its stance. Dr. Arvid Carlson, the 2000 Nobel Prize laureate for medicine, was commissioned by the Swedish government to evaluate fluoridation on behalf of Sweden, which ended up in a decisive rejection of fluoridation. He had this to say. He said, "Fluoridation is against all the principles of modern pharmacology. It's really obsolete. No doubt about that. I mean, think of those nations using it. They should feel ashamed of themselves. It's against science." This is like the Nobel Prize laureate for medicine. Dr. William Hersey, he was a senior EPA chemist and of the EPA headquarters union. He had this to say: if the hydrofluorosilicic acid, or the FSA, if this stuff gets into the air, it's a pollutant. If it gets into the river, it's a pollutant. If it gets into a lake, it's a pollutant. But if it goes right straight into your drinking water system, it's not a pollutant. That's amazing. So, as Dr. Beck said, the precautionary principle, unless it's certain, we ought not to be putting it in drinking water. So I guess I would just like to say I really would like to encourage the Council of Cardston to take a stand for what's right for the citizens, medically, economically, morally, ethically, before God. What's right by everybody. And I ask you to please end this harmful practice that's being perpetrated.
Thank you very much. I surely appreciate your presentation. Are there any questions from Council for Dr. Beck or for this associate?
It seems like the opposition is running a real battle because the World Health Organization, the American Center for Disease Control, Canadian Dental Association,
Yes.
they all laud fluoridation.
Yes.
So, those are big outfits.
They are. Well, and there's, as we mentioned, there's a lot of industry ties. This is not a simple or clean argument. There's a book that we can leave with you. We have copies if anybody's interested. Just we sell them for cost, but it's the entire history of fluoride. The book is called The Fluoride Deception. It's written by an award-winning English journalist who did like an expose on fluoride, and he had no idea what he was getting into when he started the investigation. But he ended up running into the biggest transnational corporations in the world, running amok of them. We have Dow, we have Alco aluminum. So the kind of politics that are at play is what's really at stake. But one thing I can offer to you is that we're in the middle right now of doing a rigorous and thorough rebuttal of the most recent Alberta Health Services document on their arguments for fluoride, where we take each point and we show published paper by published paper how their quotes are incorrect, misquotes, or unsubstantiated completely. So we would be happy to pass that on to you when it's complete.
Well, we would appreciate, I'm sure, to have that piece of information. I was born in Europe. I never had fluoride in the water and grew up without that. But I'm still quite interested to hear all sides.
Yes.
Because it's wise.
Yes.
But I also want to know what is it that we have to look for.
Yes.
To be alert.
Yes.
As to what we hear.
Well, and if I may say too, and this is what Dr. Beck I think was encouraging you to do, is that we really want to have a discussion, not just a presentation, and it's not floating.
Right.
And we're willing to engage. Dr. Beck has his technical expertise, which is considerable. He's world respected in this field. That he's willing to offer to you when you have to come to that decision-making process and you have those questions.
Mr. Bengry?
One more question for Dr. Beck. Where did the City of Calgary go with this?
Where did what?
The City of Calgary go with this?
What did they do with this?
Yeah.
They removed the
They stopped the fluoridation in 2011.
Yeah.
And it was the ethical situation, wasn't it?
Well, that was what we were told by two councillors was the most powerful argument for them. Well, the most understandable argument. And so yes, that's what they did. But there was a vote 2 years earlier, I think, when it was proposed, a motion was made to stop again, and that vote was lost by, I don't know, 1 or 2
1,
votes.
2 votes.
And, but the one in 2011 was, the vote was, what did I say, 12 to 3. There are 15 members of council.
But I think essentially what we have to do is look at all the evidence that are given to us,
agreed.
and regardless of what somebody else think, make a decision for our town that will be good for our citizens. And that, I appreciate very much your presentation, so thank you so much for all you
My
did.
offer for more information stands.
Yeah, I think you have given us a good start, and you've given us a chance to ask you more questions. And if we can, if you want to leave that book with us, to give us a chance to share it, it'll be great.
That's a gift from
Thank you so
some
much.
Calgary dentist.
Thank you, I will take it.
I'm just sorry that I didn't have any more left.
Okay, it's all right.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you so much, appreciate your time. Okay.
Mayor?
All right.
Mayor?
You are welcome to stay with us, or you are, whatever you like to do. I'm sure the rest is quite, just give us a chance. Just stay with us if you want, or you may leave, whichever you wish.
I think we'll probably be.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
And welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Please don't hesitate to contact us.
Thank you.
Yes. Thank you.
I'd like to suggest a thank you to Justine Scott for bringing this issue
Yes.
to the...
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I just want to say thank you to them for coming.
Well, you did your homework and you helped us to get good information. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. We're going to be on 7C13. Take a few minutes to allow our delegation to move on.
We could just move forward.
All right. So if you look at 7C, it is a municipal elected officials emergency management course. This is a course that Councillor Edmonds and I, and maybe Councillor Creed took a couple of years ago. And it's a good course. It helps you understand a little bit more what the emergency management for a town should look like. And it's offered in March 27th and 28th in a county. For myself, I have problem.
The date hasn't been confirmed, those are the two options, it's just a
27 or 28, correct? The 27th, we already have something going on. I have in Lethbridge, and what else do we have? I have something going on that night. The 28th, I also have something going on. So I might not be able to go, but if some of you could go, would be great.
Mayor, we got a touch of this at the Emerging Trends workshop in Calgary.
This is a full day. Was it a full day or full? Pretty well. Was from 10 to 4, something like that?
Yeah, this one, it says only for a couple of hours plus lunch.
Yeah.
Okay, so is that in the morning? Is that 10 to 12?
Well, they're talking 11:30 to 1:30.
Yeah. Right.
Okay, well, if that is the case, I couldn't find the time, so thank you. If that is the case, I might be able to go.
I'd like to attend.
Would you prefer, would you let Marian know what's your preferred date?
Just, along these lines, there was some thoughts that we as a town might want to reconsider in our emergency management plans, who, forgive me.
The whole model.
Yeah, the model.
The whole model.
I'm wondering if this is something we should do before this, or if this is something we should consider after this. I mean, which one would be more
I think
effective?
Marian will say probably after, because we won't have time to reorganize everything.
Sure, I have nothing to do. The intent of this is really for council to understand their role in the event of an emergency. So it'll talk a little bit about the emergency plan and what your responsibilities are to ensure that there's certain things in place in the municipality. But the intent really is for you to understand your role. But further to that, then I think there is going to be some discussion, actually as part of our shared service review, about how we function with our emergency management as a region.
Councillor Bengry?
With that information then, is it imperative that we attend this workshop, or we ask that our CAO bring that back to us as a council and say, hey, this is your role as a
My understanding is the course is an elected
It's
official.
for the elected
Yeah,
official, it's
I-
not for the
I want to
CAO.
go.
Okay, so Councillor, which date is best for you?
The 28th is the Thursday, is that right?
27th is Thursday.
Okay, either one works.
Okay,
Thursday.
so if it's Thursday at that time, I might be able to go at that time. Thursday at that time will be fine.
Is this a course that it would be part of our continuing education?
There's no cost associated,
Okay.
except your time there. So
Yeah.
this is put on by Mark Murphy, who is the regional director for Alberta Emergency Management in our area.
So if there was an emergency, he would be our first contact.
This is a 2-hour meeting,
Approximately.
just
Yeah.
kind of basically through the lunch
Yeah,
time.
that-
That works out good, so either one of those days is good for me. Just so you know.
So
Yeah, that's a good point. Since it is lunch, Friday works for me too, so yes, either
Either day.
day.
sorry, I'm just trying to get a head count.
Mayor, do you want us to go?
Let's put it this way, Councillor Bengry, I already went, but a refresher for me is good, because it's 2 years ago I took it, so a refresher for me is good.
If
I
you-
won't
if
force
you-
you to go nowhere.
No, but if you've been there, is the information imperative that we have it?
The information allows you to understand your role better, because not when you have the emergency that you need to understand your role, it's too late. You need to know it very clearly in your mind before that happens.
And I'll attend on a Friday.
If it's a Friday but not a Thursday?
I could do either. Preferably a
you.
Friday.
All right? Councillor Creed, and you,
Yeah,
Councillor
yeah,
Edmonds?
My preference would be a Friday as well.
You want-
I can make either work, but.
Either
We're
way.
saying Friday is the preferential
Okay,
day
it's
for
fine.
all of, I can't say, well, some prefer Thursday, some prefer Friday.
I think
'cause we're
we
in the same
prefer
boat.
Friday.
Do a Friday for us.
We would prefer a Friday, but.
Okay.
Yeah, the
we'll make
majority
whatever
want Friday,
work.
so let's do
I
it
think
then,
Yeah.
if they can.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's do a Friday just for us.
Are you going to it as well?
Councillor Edmonds,
Yes, I
what
will.
would you be your desire?
I don't care, because we'll be in Hawaii at that time.
Oh.
This is why you were so
We're gonna
quiet.
Skype you in.
I
Okay.
think we might have a problem.
Just stay by your
All right.
laptop, will you?
So not Councillor Creed? No, yes.
Councillor Creed,
Yeah, I'd be
will you go?
interested in going, like I say, I'm like Mayor Kronen, I've been to it before, but refresher wouldn't hurt.
I would like to just say, I'd like to echo your sentiments. I think it's important that council understand their role prior to an emergency.
Exactly.
And not try to figure it out in the middle of one,
Too
because
late.
it,
We don't want to have a high river.
Yeah, well,
They didn't know what they were doing there.
we had a reeve who was telling us, well, the snowpacks are quite heavy this year, and be prepared for some water in town, and I thought, no, you're not saying that.
My thoughts would be, after we have that presentation, because I was to it before, but I think to have a discussion as a council subsequent to actually nail down our understanding of exactly what our roles are, because you kind of hear it, but sometimes you get down to some specific things so that, for the council to discuss it at a subsequent time.
Yeah, you're making a good point. Maybe at the committee of the whole in April, could be a time to kind of
Summarize it, yeah.
review what we learned and
Good
try
point.
to feel comfortable with our role.
Yeah.
Would that be all right? Thank you. Okay. Let's go to item 8, financial report. There is none. If you see, there is a little bit of a trial balance for you with expense and revenues. That has been done with a bar graph.
Oh, in my report, I'm sorry.
Which is kind of interesting.
There's
What are you looking at?
I thought you are becoming very fancy with technology.
Remember one.
Great, good. We're going to be on item 9. So 9A, you have the town council motion list. Any questions regarding this item? No. 9B, CEO report. Marian, thank you so much for having that report. It really helps us to understand what the different departments are doing. So thank you so much, appreciate that.
Mayor,
Councillor,
can I suggest something?
please.
I think after looking at our CA report with the colors and the highlights and everything else, that I'm just gonna write down some things and hand it to her to ask her to do my report for me.
You tried that on me, Councillor. Can I vote on that?
Grab some pictures.
Yeah.
Is this a report that can go on our website?
No.
It's a report for council, it's not really something.
It's an internal report,
Okay.
this one.
All right.
The
a
paper
good
does,
report.
the
Yes, it
reporter
is.
does have access to it in the agenda package. So if there's anything in there that he would like to report on, there's nothing there that's
Thank you.
confidential, but it is an internal report.
Okay. So, let's go on with all the other...
There's one question that I had in my report that I needed.
Oh, yes. If you go into the report that Marian wrote under CAO, there is a request that Marian put forward. She has been approached by AUMA, Safe and Healthy Communities Standing Committee, to join that committee. That committee entitles to be 7 times during the year at meetings. The question that I had for Marian was, how do you see yourself juggling your work and be able to be part of this? It's an interest of hers, and I appreciate her interest. It allows her for diversification of growth, knowledge. Marian, do you want to address a little bit concerns that a council may have as to those 7 days that you might not be there? Does that affect your work?
Mayor, when I looked at this question, I'm suggesting that our CAO does belong to that committee. It will put us a foot in the door with AUMA. And I think that's very important, that we know what's happening. And I think that committee will go a little bit beyond what it's assigned. And I'm suggesting 7 days out of our CAO's life. And it might give her a little bit of a reprieve also.
Okay. You have a point, Councillor. You have a point, Councillor. The point that you're making is, what would Marian be doing on that committee? Yes, that would be doing recommendation on policies, definitely. That is definitely something that will be the committee that then will report to the provincial, at the provincial level. And in that sense, if we can influence policies, I'm all for it.
My only concern is there's 7 meetings, but there's a lot of work that you have to do prior to going
Right.
into those meetings.
And
So it's not just going to be 7 days.
Yes, I addressed this with Marian. Marian, maybe, please, address that.
Again, these extraordinary committees that we may sit on, a lot of that work is done on our own time. My priority in the 8-hour day is always what's happening currently with council here or with the community here. So it will mean that I'll have to put in some additional time for sure. I think there's an opportunity here though because of the, being the committee is the Safe and Healthy Communities Initiative. That is one of council's strategic priorities that was identified, and I thought, you know, there's a real connection there between what I could benefit from the committee and bring back to our initiatives that we're working on here at this level. It obviously is, you know, it's an honor for me to be invited to sit on the committee, so I appreciate that, but again, like I said in my report, I just felt that it was a substantial commitment and it wasn't something that I was prepared to do without council support.
I appreciate that, Marian. And we had quite a lengthy discussion because I'm concerned, of course.
Mayor Kronen, I'm ready to make a motion.
Okay.
I want to ask a question or two first.
All right. You can put your motion, but we need to carry on with question. So what would be your motion, Councillor?
I'm prepared to make a motion that we accept Marian serving on this committee.
On the AUMA committee.
Yeah, on the AUMA Safety Committee. Because it totally involves our strategic planning. It involves our intermunicipal works, and I think it's an honor that we have a CAO that's been asked to serve on that committee.
But your motion will be to allow Marian to go there. Okay,
absolutely.
so that will be the motion. Questions?
Yeah. So, Marian, you're going to have to travel there to Edmonton, so that's a 6-hour drive, 6 hour back, so you're at least 2 days, right? The meeting is 1 day?
Right.
Or can it be is it on a weekend, or is it during the middle of the week? Or?
I don't have the times on the meeting yet, but one of the things that I've done in the past, and it's because your time is a cost as well, but I've actually taken a flight out of Lethbridge at 5 in the morning to Edmonton, gone downtown for the meetings that I've had to be there for, and then flown back in the afternoon.
No,
and it's about the same cost as if you paid mileage from Cardston to drive to Edmonton, plus hotel rooms.
Yeah, I wasn't worried about that. Well, I was just concerned about your time that you're going to be on the road or up there and away. And I don't think it's always wise to travel 1 day when you're going such long distance. And so, I suggest probably an overnight, so you're rested.
And I didn't investigate this at this point, but the other thing that I would have a discussion with them is there any way that we could do like a Calgary meeting, or could we do some online meetings as well, so we don't actually have to all be in the same room? Because I'm sure I'm not the only person on the committee that would have to travel.
All right, thank you. Question?
Yeah, so again, just reading through here, are we covering the costs?
No.
They are covering all costs.
Have a good look at paragraph 2.
Hotel as well?
AUMA covers all costs.
Well, okay, AUMA would cover the cost of travel.
Hotel,
but they will
travel.
not, I don't get paid anything to be on the committee.
So travel includes the hotel, meals?
There's no per diem, but it's not required because the position of Marian is based on.
And then my last question was, you personally would prefer to be, would you desire to be on, or?
Yes. Yeah, I find it an opportunity that I think would be beneficial for both myself and as well for the community. And just so council is aware, I have had this conversation with my husband, because it is again some additional away time, and he's supportive of whatever decision I make or council makes.
All right, so we have a motion.
Well, I have one more question before we present that motion. Marian, would you prefer to fly out at 5 o'clock in the morning or drive up the night before? Because staying in a motel it can be relaxing.
It depends on
the weather.
circumstance.
I think Marian
Might I
will
say,
judge that.
it doesn't really matter, we're not even covering the cost for
No.
either of them anyway.
No.
So
I
that's-
think Marian can judge.
Yeah, either or, whatever.
Yeah. Councillor Creed?
I think this is a great idea. I've toyed with the idea ever since I've learned about the AUMA that we don't have more input. I mean, many committees are staffed by councillors or mayors from many communities. And, you know, with Marian taking the first venture into, you know, being on an AUMA committee, that may open the door that maybe some of the others of us might be interested at some point on looking at an AUMA committee and being
But she was invited, which
Yeah.
is
involved there.
They're always looking for people.
If you remember, in pretty well our very first meeting or so, we had an offer from AUMA to come and help them with some of the committee. And we decided as a council that the first year was not the right year for any of us to devote so much time away from our council duty. But in time, I believe there is an opportunity for all of us, yes. Okay, let's move on. We're doing great.
Do we need to vote on the motion?
We need to move on, and no more questions? Okay, all in favor? Thank you, with our blessings. 9C is a report from the Mayor's Symposium in Edmonton. It's a document that I gave to you, written by Eli Miner, who is a parliamentarian. It's inside pretty well towards the end of your, just after this beautiful.
9C.
I have got that. It's not here?
Yeah, it's
9C?
Okay. And
Oh, I see, gotcha.
the topic is called Working with Your Council. So it's really addressed from the point of view of a mayor working with council. But I thought it was interesting for you to understand the ins and outs and difficulties that one can encounter in that position. There is a lot of motions that are there, language that you can use to make motions. So it's quite an interesting document for your interest. Committee reports. I want to congratulate you all for the fine job you are doing on reporting. It makes our monthly reporting much easier and allow us all to understand what's going on. So we are going to just try to go through the reports that we haven't had so that I understand for sure what's happening there. There are a few extra reports that has been put on your table. You have the Parks and Rec, that was a meeting we had yesterday. You have the intermunicipal, that was today's meeting. Do you have that one? Yes? Okay, so those are two reports that are filed in, and then there is a library report that was also a February 24th meeting.
Mayor Kronen, can I have clarification on this Parks and Recreation?
Or can you give me a chance to go through them, and when we get there, can you...
Are we gonna read all the reports?
No.
Good. Hallelujah.
No.
We will touch on
Okay,
each.
we will touch on it, and if you have some questions, please ask.
Yeah.
Okay, so right now what we are looking at, the audit committee, there was an audit committee report. Last meeting. Communities in Bloom is meeting
We're meeting Thursday, this
Thursday,
Thursday, and
so
so that's why I didn't have a
there's
report
none.
because we haven't met.
the college is Councillor Barfuss that is
This Thursday.
going to have that meeting on Thursday.
Correct.
And you will be giving my regrets, but I cannot be there that day. Community Futures, Councillor Edmonds.
We met on Friday and Saturday for a planning and AGM meeting and set up some plans for trying to get more money out. We have lots of money available, and we just need to find places that people want to start a business, or if you know if anybody is looking for money to start a business and can't get any funding from the banks, come and see us.
Councillor,
Have you ever been invited to talk to the Chamber of Commerce?
Not myself, no, but I think some of the other members.
Yeah,
they have a member there.
Yeah.
Tony is right there.
Is it your president?
He's the
Manager, yeah.
Manager.
Their
Yeah.
manager is the chamber, he's a chamberman.
Okay.
And he sits at all the chambers meeting.
He keeps us in line.
Right, and it sits on the ECDEV here too. ECDEV and tourism, no meeting this month. Handy bus, there was no meeting, or no meeting. Historical Society,
They're in process of having the meeting right now.
okay.
Followed by the AGM at 7.
Okay, so we will be done by 7, so you can go.
Good.
Intermunicipal Development Park Committee, Plan Committee, I just gave you that, we had the meeting this morning, and so I have written a little bit of summaries. One element one point that is interesting for us is definitely the cemetery and transfer station roads. We're going to strike an agreement to figure out how we're going to maintain those two roads in partnership. Okay?
Because there's a county road, really, isn't it?
The county road, okay, here is the deal, the county road, but the end of those roads lead to something that the town and the county use.
Right.
Right? So this is why we thought that it would be wiser to try to strike an agreement and have a written agreement once and for all, which we have done. Okay? The Levitt irrigation is a yearly meeting, so it's not there. Library, Councillor Barnes just gave us his report.
Good report, too.
Thank you. The mayor's report from Sterling Raymond McGrath. There is something I need to ask of you regarding this particular point. You will see that under item 4, I think, we have an agreement. We're trying to work together on with the 3 other towns, McGrath, Sterling, and Raymond, to try to see what we're going to do with the agreement between our town and the school board regarding fields, etc., maintenance. And they have a similar problem. So what we were trying to do is to have one united kind of presentation to the school board regarding the issues that are common to us all. And so what I wanted to know is, do you approve of such a common approach with the school board, because we need to write a letter?
Go ahead, Barfuss.
Well, I'm not trying to discourage you, I'm trying to help you.
I actually think that that's probably the only way we're going to make any progress there.
Thank you. Any other comments?
Besides my smart aleck comment about having to work with,
Okay,
other municipalities.
so do I hear that we can then write a common letter? If you will feel comfortable with that, do we need a motion for that?
To who?
It's with the school board.
See, this is my question. I want somebody to explain to me what this joint use agreement is and what
Okay, that's a very good point.
what is the solutions we're seeking for a problem? What's the
Okay.
problem?
Okay, you have an excellent question, Councillor Bengry, and administration can help us with that. Jeff, could you?
I think
Marian?
Jeff heard my political view on it before we started this meeting.
Okay, so let's, Jeff, maybe help us on this one. Go ahead.
The joint use agreement has been an agreement between the school division and the town. I can't tell you off the top of my head the year it was the most recent version was devised. It essentially lays out the responsibilities of each party for the use of each other's facilities and associated fees from the town side for the school use of facilities such as the ice center, the pool, and the green spaces and parks, particularly Lions Park. Over the last few years, the use of facilities has changed since that agreement was put into place. And there's some concern on both sides of the agreement that maybe it's not as equitable as it once was, and that it's time to review it, and to have an understanding of what community programming is taking place in the schools and what school programming is taking place on the town facilities. And so the intent is for both sides to identify that and to both feel like there's an appropriate share of the costs of hosting and maintaining and cleaning up after and repairing after those events, both school and town. So this has been worked on for a while by the rec board.
Maybe just speak to the capital improvements in the Lions Park as well.
Yeah, so the other thing that's come up quite a few times since I've been here is the need for some capital improvements at Lions Park. And there seems to be an appetite from the school to share in that. And obviously we would have an appetite to share in that as well. But we need to be able to be a little more organized and have a little better understanding of how we're going to share those and who's responsible for what, particularly at that facility. That's a major one because so much school programming goes on at the Lions Park. So Dr. Cottle kind of began this conversation on behalf of the rec board. He's been the chair of that rec board for a couple of years. And we've drafted an agreement, we've kind of walked away from that agreement, and now we're reapproaching how we can get back to the table on this. You've seen in the CAO's report that we're meeting administratively with the school just to talk about the upcoming expectations for the year on the Lions Park, just to make sure everyone knows what we can do, what we can't do, what the school can do, and so we have all that ironed out early in the spring versus having a conflict about it during the summer. We're going to get that done in March. I think that'll be great. And I think it's important that between the parties we have a good understanding of those costs and compensation for use of each other's facilities.
Okay, so I'll go back to the question then, would council support negotiating regionally with the school board?
Yes.
And if so, I need a motion.
I would like to have just a look at that joint use agreement, you know, if I could, and that I'd give me more understanding of what's happening there and our commitment.
Also, just a quick question for Jeff. Just now you mentioned school use of our facilities, the town's use of school facilities. Does the town's use include other, clubs and organizations that aren't necessarily schools, but maybe aren't necessarily town?
Wait,
Part of the discussion.
if I might, Mayor.
Go ahead.
That's actually one of the really difficult points we've been having so far in this agreement. What is the women's volleyball on Wednesday night? It's not a school activity, but it's not really a town one. We don't know much about it. But the school takes a position, and probably rightfully so, that if it's not a school activity, by default, it's a community activity. It's not particularly wrong. What's men's basketball at the high school every morning? It's not a school activity, but it's not really one that we know much about either. So we've been having a lot of discussion about what's the appropriate way to identify these groups and identify them as community or school, and what are the ramifications of that? That's kind of formalizing it a little bit. Yeah. Should we be scheduling for them? Should we be taking fees from them all? Who's insuring them? There's a number of these types of questions that have come up from that very question that, to be honest, we don't have quite worked out yet.
Marian?
And to further what the mayor was talking about, at the mayor's meeting with Raymond McGrath-Sterling, they are the municipalities that are within the West Wind boundaries as well, right? And so, as the mayor said, they face a lot of the same questions. And so at that meeting, they just had determined that perhaps it was reasonable to say, let's all treat both the towns and the school division equally amongst those boundaries, and it would make sense to then negotiate that agreement on a regional level.
So
we do think there'll be a number of things that we can't have in the regional agreement. There's some specifics like Lions Park.
Yeah.
We have unique arrangement in each town, but we think there's some basic things that can be negotiated.
Yeah. So give me a sense where you want to go with this.
Well, I'm just curious at this point how involved we want to be in claiming all those, non-town, non-school activities. In fact, it scares me a little bit, so.
Or do we even have a choice?
Or do we have a choice? Yeah, I don't want to exclude people and have the school block them out because we were stubborn too. So we have to be careful.
I got to give it to administration for having started the discussion one more time. They were prepared with an agreement. The agreement was somehow rejected at the last minute after months of work. We don't quite understand the reasoning, but it's what happened. Jeff has started a negotiation with the school board one more time. They're willing to meet and to address some particular aspect, which is the Lions Park and the Ball Diamond, if I understand. So that will be the two first items that they will look after that are not common to the other towns at this point. So we're looking at other aspects, commonalities that we want to kind of address as one body rather than four bodies, because united we stand stronger, to find a solution. And then there are those specific areas in each town that need to be negotiated differently.
Then there, because this is a committee, then am I out of line for asking for this council to have a look at that joint use agreement? Or should I leave that alone and leave it up to that committee with our representation?
I would say, Councillor Bengry, that what you just said at the end is probably more appropriate, since it is the work of the committee, but it is also for administration to kind of become the buffer zone.
At the end of the day, when that agreement is put together, it will come before.
It will come to council.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Then I'm good with that.
Okay, so would you accept the recommendation to have the town join with McGrath, Sterling and Raymond to negotiate with the school board on a regional level? Okay,
Do we need a
so
motion on
we
that?
need a motion,
I
yes.
so move that.
So Councillor Barn put a motion forward
And do
that
we
we
need a
will.
delegate?
I'm on the Parks and
Or-
Recreation.
We have
mayor-
one.
The
I
mayor's.
am on that
Okay, you're on.
group already. Any more questions? All in favor? Thank you. All right, and so that's very good. OSC did not meet.
Yeah, they met, I wasn't able to attend, but
Okay,
we all got a copy of this South Saskatchewan Regional Plan, which they're
Right.
hoping people will look at and come up with some comments on it as to.
and for your information, the last day to provide comments is February the 28th.
This is the last week.
Yeah, that's pretty well.
And I think we as a council should encourage others that we
Each
know
of us
that
to do
this is the
something.
final week.
We participated in all the sessions, and I'm grateful for the large numbers of councillors that were able to attend. Thank you. Okay, Councillor Bengry, you wanted to address the Parks and Rec.
I did that already.
Okay, so we
That
done.
that was this item 1.
Okay, all right, so fine. The South Grove, we didn't have a meeting, we're meeting on the 27th. Now, I have a couple of questions. Do you have a couple of questions?
I have one item on one of the reports,
Okay,
the meeting that we had with Corporal Brown.
okay, go ahead.
You didn't have that I was in attendance at that meeting. I was at that meeting as well.
Was you?
But you just had Councillor Bengry and Mayor Kronen and Marian, but I was there as well.
You know something? I can't remember you being there.
Yeah, he was.
Made
You were
quite
right
the
about the
impact there.
You must not have said too much that day, so I cannot remember you.
asked Corporal Brown several questions.
Okay, we shall make that correction then.
Corporal Brown is finished also.
Would it be fine?
That would be absolutely wonderful.
I'm so sorry. You
Don't do it.
slipped out of my mind so quickly.
That's how much you care about me.
Oh, totally. Councillor Barn, I shall remind you I sat for you and I wrote for you.
Thank you.
That's how much I
Appreciate
care.
I appreciate it very much.
Can I make a suggestion about the committee reports? I'm loving them, they're getting reported, it's beautiful. I'm wondering, for the sake of organization, as we go through, especially in this meeting, we're rushing, we're trying to flip to, now we're at the Chinook, where was that? Is there a way we could set up just a master PDF with them in alphabetical order, and then as the reports come in, just copy and paste into that, and then we get it? And if reports are late, then we have empty gaps, but it's all in a nice orderly flow for this. Today, I'm just referring to what today was for me.
You got nothing else to do anyway.
Okay.
So,
Well, I would hope
it would be
you had-
easier
I would
to
hope you had
go
read them
through
all.
these.
Mayor,
Go ahead.
there are some things we need to talk about on the Chief Mountain.
Yes,
I had a question.
yes.
No
There are
chance.
a few things there that I want
No
to
chance.
ask you question on. Okay. Councillor Bengry, I really appreciate your report, except that I realized you didn't have a quorum when you had that meeting. And it really intrigued me that the meeting went on without a quorum. Okay?
Well, the meeting can go on without a quorum,
You did
but
vote.
no votes were taken.
Right, exactly. But my question to you is as follows. Does your committee have terms of reference
I have
structure?
no idea. The airport committee, I have no idea.
Marian?
Just to speak to that, I actually met with Doug, Murray, and Leonard a few weeks ago. There is no formal structure, and so I've given them a little bit of guidance, and they're in the process of putting together their terms of reference and a more formal structure for the airport committee.
Okay, that is great, because my concern was that you say it was noted that an election of officers would take place at the next meeting in March, and this would depend on attendance. I said, oh, good grief.
Well-
And weather, and I understand that, but I was thinking if you had a term of reference, then people would know, hey, you know what, it's yearly meeting, be there.
Well, that is good to know with the airport, but it's been such a committee of volunteers, total volunteers, and a lot of members live out of town.
Yeah.
So in the winter months, it's really hard to
Yeah, the
get
weather and the,
participation there.
maybe the yearly meeting should
Be in April or May.
at a better time
Yeah.
of the year. And that's something you could do with the
And
terms of
I will
reference.
suggest that.
You know, thanks. Okay, now, Councillor Barfuss, with the Waste Authority, has had many questions. And please, do you want to talk to your
What's it
questions?
gonna cost us?
I would love to talk to our questions on this.
That doesn't sound.
There's a number of things happening, and some of them really good, and some of them maybe shooting beyond the mark a little bit. But the biggest one that happened this last meeting, I guess the big two things. With SEWA, is everybody familiar with what SEWA is? So there's a distinct lack of desire on behalf of most of the members of the Chief Mountain Solid Waste Authority that want to be involved with that anymore. And memberships are dropping quite rapidly there. It'll be interesting to see what happens with our best practices study, which we actually had a meeting last night with, and I think we're making some good progress there. But the biggest issue that came up at our last meeting was there is a desire amongst some of the members to no longer incur the cost for audit. One of the questions that came up. Yeah. So the first question that came up with is, as an authority, are they required to have an audit?
Yes.
And would a review suffice in replacement of an audit? And if that were the case, would it be possible for one of the communities to have one of their staff perform that review? My personal opinion is that perhaps we're going down the wrong road, just trying to get rid of an audit. Does administration?
Councillor Barfuss, can I address that a little bit?
Sure, if you have some,
I'm going to tell you, that's a recurrent problem. Every time the authority is short of money, they see $7,000 and I think that will solve the mighty all.
yes, and I know this has come up in the past
It's
as well.
not solving the mighty all. What it will create, it's a lack of transparency and accountability, which
Agree
we
with you.
cannot support.
Agree with you 100%. I guess the first question that I had was for administration. Is it a requirement for there to be an audit?
I have not looked into that, and I apologize, I should have.
What's the
before the
terms of
meeting.
reference? Where do they get
I
the money
think,
from?
I think we looked at
Us,
it.
Governmental?
As an authority,
Okay.
All of
I'm
us?
not sure.
Yeah,
Mayor?
but does it come from government too?
No.
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 The authority's finances are done by requisition to the 11 members that are members of the community.
Marian, oh, sorry. If I remember, 2 years ago, we looked into that. And I think they said that could be treated a little bit like the library is. But because it involves so many municipalities, and because the requisition is fairly large and significant, it frightens me not to have proper accountability and transparency.
I
It
agree.
really does.
I agree 100%.
And that was my position at our meeting.
Thank you. Keep on pushing on that.
I just wanted to make sure that I had council's.
Yeah, you have our.
We'll just search
I think.
here in the MGA to see if we can find something on that. But one of the things that I have a concern with is that we are just ready to award the best practices study.
Yeah.
And part of that is the organizational structure and design, as well as the governance model. And so a lot of that may change, and I would suggest that for 1 year, they continue with the audit until at least that best practices study is done. And that can be part of that conversation. If those board members feel that maybe the audit is unneeded, in our process last night, it was very clear that the individual over the governance model would be doing personal interviews, and so they can express those concerns at that time, and maybe that's the way to approach it.
That's a great way to approach it.
Mayor Kronen, I absolutely agree with you 100%. When we have somebody requisitioning us, it is our duty and responsibility to our citizens to know how that money is being spent and what's happening with it. And I think an audit is totally a yearly audit, regardless of what happens with this other.
I would prefer
And that has been, when
Your position.
we were, when other members of our council were sitting on this particular committee, that was our position then. It's been my position in these discussions. And we were specifically asked to bring it back to council.
Right.
Because a couple of the members are hoping that their councils will be in favor of reducing that. From the perspective of like Mayor mentioned here, $7,000 is what the cost is of the audit every year. Anytime there's even a hint that there might be an issue financially, that's one of the areas that they go after, so.
The first item, every time, next the audit.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, maybe there's other area where they need to see cost reduction.
One of the other concerns I have with that suggestion is that if they are looking to a municipality to provide that review, that does not create independence.
That's right, it's not independent.
So if they were because we are member municipalities, if they're looking for a review, if that was the decision, it really needs to be a third party firm of some kind that has some independence.
Councillor Barfuss, do you need a motion from this council or support from this council in favor of an audit?
I don't know that I need a motion or anything like that. It was just a matter of making sure that you were aware and that we were on the same page going into that.
Yeah, I think you have, from what I can hear, support from council to move forward in that direction. There is something else that you were talking about, is again, regarding CWA and the traveling cost of a member that is not even a paid member of CEWA, I don't think.
Yes, they are.
The village is?
Yeah, Glenwood is,
Yes,
yeah.
okay.
Glenwood is, yeah.
All right, so I stand to be corrected. So my concern was also of the expense. I mean, 2 years ago, we had almost $10,000 in expense, in travel and expense that were paid by all the communities to a person that represents CEWA that the authority does not support. So where is the logic in here? I don't get it.
So, as it stands right now, the authority does not send anybody there anymore. They are not, whatever Ben does in that regards is between him and his council and CEWA. The only question I have then is, at this point, we haven't really got a designated person that is attending the CEWA meetings for our council, so that we're getting the information. So that's more where my concern is at.
Okay.
From the authority's perspective, it's been dealt with, and Ben's no longer being paid to represent.
Okay, so here is a little bit of something I can bring to the table. As part of the mayor and Reeve, Mayor Craig is the designated mayor that reports on CEWA to that body, to mayors and Reeve every month. But we could get the information that way. What we don't have is a voice at the table and a voting power at the table. How important is it at this time? I do not know. I think that when the AGM comes, I have an AGM coming, I think that one, or did they have it? Just had it. That is when they vote on all sorts of things.
Agreed.
Otherwise, they kind of go through recommendations, reading reports, hoping that the government finally will give them the okay with their planning. They still have to decide the locations. They still have to decide on which machine incinerator they want to use to produce energy. We're not there yet.
That's correct.
So, do we want to have a member of this council, which would be at this time Councillor Barfuss, to go on a quarterly basis to the CEWA meeting?
Are we gonna stay and say what?
So here's.
We paid for
Right,
this year.
we're a member this year. My concern in going to the CEWA meetings, and quarterly wouldn't be overly onerous, except that these meetings can end up costing over $600 for me to go to. Because they go and they schedule it in Brooks. And that's a fair number of miles to travel. So my suggestion would be actually not for us to be sending a representative right now.
Okay.
To get what information we can get from
And I put
those
it in
who
a
are
report.
attending.
Okay.
Now, is
So
he still
what happens when
reporting?
you have to do a vote though?
Well, those are usually done at the
It's a-
AGM.
it's a
And so
yearly.
once a year, then, we should send somebody to the
Right.
AGM if we're paying for our membership there. But I'm not convinced at this point that they're far enough down the road that attending quarterly meetings has any real value.
All right, so we're clear on what we're doing. The recommendation is not to send anybody to CEWA except for the AGM, a yearly AGM, which would be in January sometime next year, or
Yes.
December.
Yeah, I
January.
think it's January.
How many other communities are doing the same thing?
So currently, there's 63 paid members.
How many go to the meeting?
Not that many.
Not that many.
Are the meetings gonna become redundant soon? If
They will
nobody's
become-
going?
Most of them are now. The meetings that Ben was going to was Ben was elected to the executive. And the executive meets on a monthly basis. And so that's why those costs were so frequent and so expensive. But from what I have seen as far as progress and where the holdups are on it, I don't see any significant progress being made before the next AGM anyways.
Yeah, I don't think so either. All right, Any other questions? Councillor Creed, you had a question you
Well,
wanted to ask someone.
It actually related to the Solid Waste Authority, which Councillor Barfuss has pretty much answered now, I think.
Okay. Any other questions?
I've got I just wondered about this Friday.
Okay, can we do that after
Okay,
the
that's what I
meeting?
wondered. I thought maybe
Yeah,
it was done here.
yeah.
Okay.
What we need now, under other, Marian, you had given me a sticky. There is a sticky. Okay, piece of information. April the 3rd at 6 p.m. Please mark your calendars. There is a shared service report that
Yeah.
Marian will do at that point here in this chamber.
Yes.
April
Okay.
3rd.
April 3rd, 6 p.m. You are to be how long?
We probably will be about 2 hours.
2 hours,
This is when the
okay.
consultant will be there to present our findings from the, and recommendations for areas where we can move forward with agreements on shared
It's
services.
going to be right here.
Yes, we will have the 2 villages, the town of McGrath and county council all in attendance.
So we all should be there.
Yes, it would be preferable if we could all be there. I
Boy,
mean, I
this
know
one
sometimes your schedule cannot fit that, but as many as could be there would be appreciated.
I think
a
it's
Thursday.
important, because like I said, this is the results
That's a
of the
Thursday?
consultant study, so it's good to be there and hear what his findings are.
Which is a real problem for me too, but I know what time this is.
6 p.m.
All right,
Sorry, the date's not flexible.
I understand.
We're just working around so many people's schedules, we had to pick a day, so.
all right. Are we good to go? Any question for administration under 10? Anybody else? No questions? Councillor Peavoy?
Well, I don't know if it's appropriate to bring under questions, but it's more for council. There was a consideration that, I always forget his name, it's Lloyd is our bylaw officer, right?
Yes.
Yeah, all right,
Lloyd
sorry.
Stewart.
I get confused, Leonard. That Lloyd is being approached at his home when he's not on duty.
All
People
hours
are-
of the day and night.
People are dropping off pets at his house in the middle of the night. So here, the dog was yapping at my, that we've got to do something to maybe educate the public that they need to lay off Lloyd when he's not on duty.
Okay, maybe that's for our communication clerk to put a piece of information in newspaper, on a website, on channel 32, wherever else, Twitter, Facebook, you name it, YouTube. It's quite all right, we shall do something, it's a good point. There is another question that relating to services offered by our peace officer that has come to my attention. There was a citizen that said in a lane next to subway, it's a fire lane, and mentioned that I think it's on Thursday after 5 o'clock, maybe possibly. There is possibly games at the ice rink, and that there are many children that cross the street there because parents are not parking properly, as they're illegally parked, and the traffic still carries on through that lane from Dairy Queen or wherever, and that it becomes a dangerous park. So if you let me finish for a second, then they are wondering if it's possible to have maybe the hours of the peace officer staggered, to have the day started later and to carry on, because how do we enforce the problem in that fire lane? That's just something that I relate to you.
If I might just speak to the staggering, Lloyd does flex his hours around quite frequently. The difficulty is, with one peace officer, there's no way we can capture every
Exactly.
issue of every time of day. So
Yeah.
there's, if he's not on tonight, it's gonna happen. If he's on tomorrow night, he'll ticket him. If he's not on tomorrow night, or the next
Yeah.
night, it'll happen.
All right, so
it's kind of.
if we reverse the problem then, and try to educate the population there again, maybe by way of something in the paper, on a Twitter, website and everything, to try to help parents
Well,
understand
it-
the difficulty it
Yeah,
is.
it doesn't make any difference. This has been a problem for 25 years in that fire lane, and Lloyd does enforce that quite strictly in certain times. The farmer's market is one time that, we have had peace officers there, we've had the RCMP enforce that before during games at the ice center in the evenings. It just seems to be an ongoing problem. So we'll discuss it and see if there's some other alternatives there that we can look at.
Okay, thank you.
Good luck with that.
I'm suggesting a nice big sign and the RCMP start handing out tickets. End of problem.
When they're there.
Well, I think administration will have to look at that, because those are issues that are maybe ongoing, but doesn't mean that we have to perpetuate those issues. All right, correspondence under 11, OSC, you saw a position paper from OSC on the Saskatchewan Regional Plan. AUMA webinars, those webinars, you can access them from your computer. There are 3 of them, as you could see, one on CEO, one on, let me try to see.
It comes out on our AMA news and those are.
Yeah, I mean, you could see there's
Marian forward those to us all the time, Mayor.
Yeah.
And
You actually are
Yes, directly.
subscribed through your email.
Right.
Yeah,
There was
you-
just,
you-
I thought that they were very interesting, that perhaps
Topics.
council might want.
Yeah.
So I thought I would just bring them to your attention.
Yeah, they were quite good. One is on how to consult with First Nation, the other one is on the CEO performance evaluation, and the third one is on municipal water conservation. So at your own leisure, you can go, the times are there and tells you how to do it. Okay? Now, if you look at the next item, it's 11C Building Canada Fund. That is a piece of information for you. I asked if administration wanted to talk to that. They really feel that at this time there's not enough concrete information in order to say any more than what's written here. So we shall wait and see, and administration is going to be very careful and monitoring the progress on this one.
So stop
Okay.
counting the chickens.
Well, just about right. Okay. Communities in Bloom, it's really a report that needs to be taken back to Communities in Bloom. They will decide if they want to participate as a competition town or if they want to do it as just friends of Community in Bloom. And they have some funding to access that. The last piece of information is from Lindy McKay, and it's regarding her position on the fluoride, and to add to the presentation we had today. At this point, we need to have a motion to go in camera.
I'll move to go in camera.
Okay, Councillor Barfuss moved to go in camera. Thank you to the media for having done all that good work. The piece of in camera deals with employment matter, okay, which is under the MGA.
Well, they're tearing down on the one.
Right. Thank you.
Come back.
We can take a 2-minute
Oh, I'll be
break.
there.